Hello everybody and welcome to another uncanny episode of History of the Marvel Universe. This channel is brought to you in part by Patreon supporters. If you would like to vote on what topics get covered on the channel and get your name the special thanks at the end of each episode, you can sign up for as little as $1 per month over at patreon.com/MaryMarvelite. The link is in the description below. Born in Annandale-on-Hudson in Dutchess County, New York, Jean Grey was the daughter of John Grey, a history professor who taught at Bard College, and his wife, Elaine. Growing up, Jean had a good relationship with her parents and with her older sister, Sarah. Smart for her age and a bit of a tomboy, she spent much of her time with her best friend, Annie Richardson. However, tragedy struck one summer when Jean was only 10 years old. She and Annie were playing with a frisbee just outside her converted farmhouse home. Her father had left for work and her mother warned the two girls to be wary of cars coming around the blind curve. As Jean threw the toy disc, the wind picked up, carrying it out into the road. Annie ran after it without thinking and Jean yelled at her to wait and be careful, but it didn't matter. The driver, coming around the corner, didn't see the young girl until it was too late, and Annie never saw the car at all. Young Jean saw her best friend get hit and rushed over to her side. Annie was still alive when she reached her, but her body was broken and she was in tremendous pain. This event would irrevocably change Jean's life in more ways than one. You see, Jean Grey was no ordinary girl. She was a mutant, born with an extra gene that would endow her with extraordinary powers. For most mutants, their abilities manifest sometime during puberty, but in some cases, certain triggers, either physical or emotional, can cause their powers to activate prematurely. And that's exactly what happened with Jean Grey. At 10 years old, she suddenly gained the ability to hear and feel the thoughts and emotions of others. And so not only did she experience the trauma of seeing her best friend die, holding her in her arms as it happened, she inadvertently entered Annie's mind and actually felt what it was like to die. Deeply traumatized and unable to control her power, Jean became incredibly withdrawn, both socially and emotionally. She shut everyone out and refused to speak to anyone. Over the following year, her parents became increasingly worried and her sister missed the outgoing person she used to be. Whenever her parents would try to bring her places, she would scream in pain, and they even had to empty out her room of belongings to prevent her from trying to hurt herself. They tried bringing her to a variety of different psychiatric professionals, but none were able to even get her attention, let alone make any headway in lifting her depression. However, one of them recommended that they consult with a man named Charles Xavier, a professor who John Grey had previously befriended at Bard College. Unbeknownst to the Greys, Xavier was much like Jean, a mutant with powerful telepathic abilities. But his powers had developed much more slowly and naturally, allowing him to hone his control over them throughout his adult life. Entering Jean's mind, Xavier found her reliving the moment of Annie's death over and over again, unable to tear herself away from that memory, constantly experiencing the sensation of dying. But he was able to show her that there was more to her mind than the pain and depression. There was also joy and beauty if she knew where to look. He showed her that she could still dream. After experiencing the sensation of death so many times, Jean Grey was, in a sense, resurrected. And when Xavier offered to help her learn to control her powers, Jean agreed. The professor saw great potential in the girl, and as he trained her, they discovered that telepathy wasn't her only mental power. She was also telekinetic and could move objects with her mind. Soon, she began to smile again, and she was able to reach out and speak with others, starting with her sister, Sarah. When he felt she was ready, Xavier brought Jean to a crowded mall to test her ability to block out the thoughts of those around her. However, it seems it was still too soon, and when she lost focus, her mind was flooded with a cacophony of mental noise. Instinctively, she lashed out with her telekinesis, pushing away everyone around her. Realizing she was still too young, Xavier then erected mental barriers in Jean's mind, walling off her telepathic abilities until she was mature enough to control them, but without blocking her telekinetic powers. Over the following years, he continued to meet with Jean and training her, and at one point she sensed a boy calling out for help, another mutant. While they didn't all have mental powers like them, there were indeed many other young mutants who would need help and guidance. And so during this time, Xavier was also working on opening up a boarding school for them using his country mansion in Westchester. And indeed, the first student there would be the young man whose thoughts Jean had sensed, Scott Summers. With his power to fire beams of concussive force from his eyes, he took the code name Cyclops and became the first of Xavier's team of teenage mutant superheroes, the X-Men. Soon, several others were found and recruited as well, including Angel, Iceman, and the Beast. Shortly after that, a now teenaged Jean Grey moved into the X-Mansion to become the final founding member of the team. Taking the name Marvel Girl, she began training with the others, learning to use her telekinetic abilities to defend herself and protect others. The team soon made their public debut when they first battled the man who would be their nemesis for some time, Magneto. In those early days, each of the other X-Men, except for Iceman, quickly developed feelings for Jean. Angel initially decided to pursue her and was determined to somehow win her over. The Beast, while initially flirtatious, decided not to do the same and kept his own affection secret. It was Scott Summers, Cyclops, who Marvel Girl found herself drawn towards, but both were reluctant to approach one another due to his position as team leader. During their first year, the X-Men faced a myriad of different foes, including the Vanisher, the Blob, the Submariner, and the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. At some point during this, the original 5 X-Men also met a future version of the Beast who'd traveled back in time. Future Beast brought the X-Men over a decade forward in time, hoping they could help stop the Cyclops of that era from going down a dark and violent path. They had many adventures in the future, but at the end of it, any and all physical changes they went through were reversed, and they returned to their own time. Their memories of the future were also suppressed, so the timeline wouldn't be altered, but those memories would later be unlocked shortly after the point in time in the future they departed from. Back to their regular schooling, the X-Men soon proved themselves capable and graduated from Xavier's teaching. While the team continued to battle injustice together, Jean later left to continue her education by attending Metro College, but she would occasionally return to help when she was able to do so. At college, Jean met and befriended a young man named Ted Roberts. Much to Scott's dismay, Ted was yet another potential suitor for Jean. As a side note, Ted's brother Ralph was an ex-Stark Industries employee who used a blue cobalt alloy to build a suit of radioactive armor and battled the X-Men as the Cobalt Man. Shortly after that, Jean and Scott began to open up to each other a little more and grew closer. She later returned to the team on a more full-time basis and helped design new individual costumes for them. Around that time, Professor Xavier learned of an impending invasion from an alien threat known as the Xenox. While sequestering himself away to prepare, Xavier enlisted the shape-shifting mutant Changeling to impersonate him and cover up his absence. The only X-Man to be made aware of this was Marvel Girl, who was old enough to have the psychic shields blocking her telepathic abilities removed, so she could help Changeling fake the professor's mental powers. However, a few weeks later, the imposter Xavier was killed in a battle against the subterranean subhuman Grotesque. This put Jean in the uncomfortable position of needing to continue the ruse while knowing that the real Professor X was still alive. As another side note, the lawyer who read Xavier's last will was Foggy Nelson of Nelson and Murdoch. Anyway, after that, at the request of their FBI contact, Fred Duncan, the X-Men disbanded and spread out across the country. Jean remained in New York and did modeling work as a cover for her superhero career. Scott also stayed to play the part of her jealous boyfriend, and thus in a roundabout way the two finally started dating. Of course, the team eventually reunited and learned that Professor X was still alive. With the truth finally revealed, the X-Men opposed the Xenox invasion that Xavier had been preparing for all that time. Reunited with their mentor, the original 5 X-Men embarked on several more adventures in which they encountered the Incredible Hulk, battled their nemesis Magneto in the Savage Land, and teamed up with the weather-manipulating mutant Storm. After that, they joined forces with the Fantastic Four to battle the Xenox once again, taking the fight to their home planet. And on the way there, Jean's mind was touched by an extremely powerful cosmic energy being known as the Phoenix Force. When this happened, she seemingly lashed out at the other heroes with flaming psionic energy, but this was something akin to a dream or a vision. From everyone else's perspective, Jean seemed to have frozen in place for a few moments, and soon the vision faded from her memory as well. After that, the X-Men and the Fantastic Four succeeded in defeating the Xenox and preventing future invasion attempts. Time rolled on, the X-Men went on several more adventures together, and Jean and Scott grew even closer. However, things would change for them again when the team was sent to investigate the living mutant island Krakoa. The Beast wasn't able to join them that time, but their forces were bolstered by 2 allies, Scott's brother Havoc and Magneto's daughter Polaris. Despite this, their mission went sideways when Jean and the others were attacked and captured by the living island. Cyclops was the only one to escape and made it back to Professor X. And so Xavier recruited a new team of mutants to join Cyclops in rescuing the captive X-Men. This new group of Uncanny X-Men included Wolverine, Storm, Thunderbird, Colossus, Banshee, Sunfire, and Nightcrawler, most of which would become regular members of the team. Ultimately, the day was saved and the 13 X-Men returned to the mansion. Once there, Wolverine expressed romantic interest in Jean, and while she found herself inexplicably attracted to the man, she denied his advances. And despite his claims of being savage and dangerous, Jean Grey saw something more in him and encouraged Wolverine to stay with the X-Men. However, between him and her experience on Krakoa, Jean decided that she should leave the team. She'd hoped that Cyclops would come with her, but he decided to stay and help lead the new generation of X-Men. Regardless, the two admitted their love for one another, and this wasn't the end of their relationship. Jean also became closer friends with Storm, thus keeping multiple ties to the team. While living in the city, she shared an apartment with Misty Knight, who fans of Power Man and Iron Fist may recognize. Things seemed to be peaceful, and later that year, during the holiday season, Jean joined Scott and the other X-Men when they went out for Christmas. However, that came to an abrupt end when the team was attacked by the mutant-hunting robots known as the Sentinels. Jean, Wolverine, and Banshee were captured by the robots and brought to their creator, Stephen Lang. But by this point, after years of practice, Jean's telekinetic powers had gotten much stronger than they once were. The three were able to break free of their bonds easily enough, but since they had been brought to an orbital space platform, they had no real means of escape. That was until the other X-Men arrived with a shuttle to retrieve them. But in the ensuing battle, the radiation shields for the craft's cockpit were badly damaged, making it impossible for their human pilot, Dr. Corbeau, to bring them home. Seeing no choice, Jean read Corbeau's mind to learn how to pilot the ship herself, and planned on using her telekinesis to protect herself from solar flares and the like. While this plan succeeded in saving the others, the ship was bombarded with cosmic radiation. While she was powerful, she was unable to filter out all of the radiation, and her body was inundated with the deadly rays. She started dying, withering away, but it seems that her plight caught the attention of a being who'd been watching her for a very long time. The ship crashed into New York's Jamaica Bay, and it seemed that all of the X-Men survived except for Jean Grey. But then she too emerged from the water. But something was different. This was not the Marvel girl they knew. It seemed that she had been reborn, resurrected, and she declared that she was fire and life incarnate. Now and forever, the Phoenix. But who or what is the Phoenix? Well, that's a question we shall explore another day, but for now, that's all I've got for this week. And thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like, share the video, and subscribe for more marvelous content. Be sure to leave a comment letting me know what Marvel hero or villain you want to hear about next, and as always, the issues referenced in this video are listed in the description below if you would like to read them for yourself, as well as links to other places you can find me, including my Patreon page where for only $1 a month you can get your name in these special thanks here. So until next time, true believers, Excelsior!